Hey, my name is Daniel, and we're here to talk about the Russian Revolution. When we ask how the Revolutionary War was formulated and won by the Russian people, we can say it was one of pure hatred towards the old regime and power struggle to move into a new light. We see this all unfold on February 23rd, 1917, when thousands of female workers and housewives took to the streets of Petrograd to protest against bread shortage to mark International Women's Day. They had essentially said they had had enough. Just the day before, the local Putilov plant been locked out, initiating a large strike of nearly 200,000 workers. This movement proved to be a lot for the leaders of the revolutionary parties. The protests had experienced activists in the Bolsheviks and SRs, or Socialist Revolutionaries, and also non-aligned Social Democrats. Soon thereafter, around February 25th, members of the middle class and students had joined the movement. The masses within the crowd had had enough of the Tsarist government, with banners stating, "Down with the war," and continued to show their feelings towards their current regime. By the next day, disaster had struck the streets. As a response, orders were given to a garrison to fire onto the crowds, resulting in hundreds in being injured or killed. This tragedy marked the turning point in the struggle of the people. On February 27th, we see Volinsky's regiment mutinated, and by the end of the day, 66,000 soldiers had done the same. Despite being from Tsar Nicholas II, the uprising proved to be too much, as the support for the Tsar were unable to be summoned due to a lack of loyal troops. Pieces began to move that same day, as the Mensheviks group began to assert the authority, as they called out to the factories and military units to elect delegates to a Soviet council, which worked as a temporary vessel to directly move the revolution. The night of the 27th, the Tsar cabinet resigned. We see by March Nicholas was highly unpopular, and great sympathy was for the revolution. After Nicholas failed to favor his brother after renouncing as Tsar, the great Roman dynasty finally came to an end after 300 years of Tsarism on March 3rd. Two major forces that brought down the monarchy were primarily the movement of the workers and the soldiers, including the middle class, which were later to be known as dual power. After the provisional government was created, the Duma politicians moved for Petrograd Soviets to join but promptly rejected. Their beliefs for the rejection was that they believed during the time of Russia was going through revolution, it was destined to go through a long period of time and development before being ready and aligned with socialism, their ultimate goal. On March 2nd, as committees as committees met, they concluded and the Soviets agreed to support the provisional government, but were not bounded by their domestic or foreign policies. So we also see here a dual power being born. By the summer of 1917, we see the consequences of the provisional government not establishing an effective command in the localities. As a result, there was a fragmentation in their power, and the Soviets began to form. This was their chance. Once October came around, the Soviet numbers reached 1,400 Russians, representing one-third of the population. The Soviets began seeing themselves as the front-running representatives for the revolutionary democracy, and at times, by some Soviets, declared themselves the sole authority. These Soviets were from Kronstadt, which consisted partly of Bolsheviks. From the very beginning, the graphs of the From the very beginning, the grasp of the domestic revolution was in dispute. For the wealthy, it meant preservation, while for the lower class, it signaled liberty and social revolution. Out of all the social groups, we see the industrial workers come out and be the most politicized, organized, and strategically formulated, with the majority being new recruits. They showed a high degree of conscious workers. In the heat of the revolution, workers concluded that after overthrowing the Tsar government, they had to follow with overthrowing the autocracy. They forced foremen they despised, along with administration, out of the shop floors. They tore the old rule book and in place conjugated and formed a worker committee and formed worker committees to give proper representation for worker representations. Swiftly, with the competence and drive of the working class, the committee launched a Bolshevik resolution to take hold a Bolshevik revolution to take hold of control of the Russian economy. The politics of the ongoing war added to the clear image of the provisional government not being well suited for long-term reign. The Soviet leaders wanted to guide Russia to democratic peace, but the provisional government faltered when Milukov spoke of prosecution of war and gave a bitter taste of standing on old terms that were blinded that were binded to secret treaties, which saw Milukov's be called for resignation. Milukov's primary opposed the revolutionary defensism, which crafted the support of national defense and continued to press the fractured provisional government. We see the SR grows to the largest political party in 1917, with almost a million members by autumn. But the party was seen as a party of peasantry. Nevertheless, they were able to rise and grow their influence. As the political struggle continued, even with groups rising, the economy was severely being affected by the war. The Russian debt had rose astronomically in this period to around 50 billion rubles. As economy was in shambles, the government printed money, further pushing inflation forward. There was even a psychological break that caused an impending doom to the public. But even though there was a sense of impending downfall, the workers and soldiers continued to show a way forward. And out of the mist, we see Lenin writings outline a vision of destroying police, army, and bureaucracy in order to cement democracy based on the Soviets. Alongside these writings, we see the surge of the Bolshevik Party, and Lenin sees the opportunity for the Bolsheviks to finally seize power. These actions ultimately propelled the decision to overthrow the provisional government. Moving onward, Trotsky created a military revolutionary committee to help unseat the government. As the troops were ordered to transfer from the provisional government, the provisional government retaliated by ordering the shutdown of the printing press. Trotsky took this as a, took Trotsky took this as a defensive advantage, and troops continued by taking control of railway stations and bridges. As the day broke on October 25th, the Winter Palace was the only thing to remain to be taken. At around 10:40 p.m., the Soviets bombarded artillery to the Winter Palace, and Trotsky echoed, "You are miserable bankrupts. Your role is played out. Go where you ought to be, into the dustbin of history." Shortly after, Soviet power was established thanks to the Bolsheviks, with surprising ease, by passing many decrees that helped the people and reflected and a reflection of popularity. The assembly finally felt and was saw as the people's power. The revolution was brutal to the Russian people, but the Bolshevik dominance power indicated a strong conspiratorial coup against democratic government. By the end of the revolution, the Russian people faced a new doom, one of anarchy or a form of dictatorship.